I'm Connor Old, and welcome to another episode of Masters of Controlled Chaos. And today we're going to be looking at an interesting director, a director that maybe not a lot of you have heard of, maybe you have and haven't seen his movies. He's sort of considered the master of horror. He's the director of The Thing, of They Live, of Escape from New York, of Halloween. He is none other than John Carpenter. Welcome back, guys. If you're new to this series, what essentially we do every single week is we break down a new filmmaker, a director, and we talk about what makes them good. That's sort of, or great, really. That's the central topic of the show. And we also look at what I consider their best movie, my favorite movie of theirs, and then an underrated one. They don't have to be all three different movies. Sometimes they overlap. Sometimes all three of them overlap. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. We've done a lot of episodes. I think we're almost up to 20 now. Maybe up to 20, yeah, maybe this is 19, I think. And John Carpenter was an interesting one I wanted to do. I know not a lot of you will necessarily gravitate towards this as you would a Alfred Hitchcock or Michael Bay, sort of more recognizable names, but I decided to do this like Sidney Lumet. This is sort of the same sort of genre where I decided to look back at older directors, maybe underappreciated ones as we get longer and longer into this series. I think John Carpenter is definitely one. A lot of people say that in the 70s there was the general people of George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola and Martin Scorsese, and a lot of these guys who are tour filmmakers that we still recognize their stuff today. And but the thing is that when it hit the 80s, people saw something like Star Wars and were like, oh, we don't need to have these filmmakers do these big risky things. We can have sort of more safer things, less risk and more money. And that's where we see the 80s sort of typical boring, or not boring, but blockbuster action movies. And people thought that, oh, that 70s sort of director's style sort of went away and didn't really resurge until the 90s indie movement. But I disagree with that based on the sole principle of John Carpenter. John Carpenter directs, sometimes writes but not really writes, but directs, scores, does the music for, and edits his own movies. So he's definitely that auteur thing, but he did all of his movies pretty much except for Halloween in the 80s. So even in this studio sort of system where everyone was putting down all this pressure on you to say, oh, you have to do safe choices, not a lot of risks, John Carpenter was able to keep that 70s style, even though he wasn't a 70s director, keep that sort of 70s spirit, for a better, lack of a better word, and really put that into the 80s sort of formula. And really when people think of John Carpenter, they think of a cult director. A lot of his movies aren't considered these amazing classics, but they have a passionate following. That's what cult means. People really love these certain amounts of movies that this guy makes and really just explore it and really want to share it. And that's why he's been relevant for so long, because this interview here, he's talking at film schools because people really dig into sort of the film history as I am, especially in the 70s. You see John Carpenter's name pop up multiple times because he's sort of master of horror, this cult director, where his movies weren't appreciated at the time, but as time has gone on and things like video and DVD releases, people really catch on to them and spread the word. And that's really why I sort of decided to do him, because he's this underrated sort of guy. He's been called the pornographer of violence. And going back to sort of the score idea, I talked about, he directs, edits, and scores his own movies, so he has a lot of control over it. And really does great scores. He does a typical Halloween score, which is super synonymous right now with a lot of people. And he does these really creepy scores, these electronic scores that really allow him to have this thing where you have this creepiness to it, and you also have this interestingness to it where it's mysterious. And he does this really interesting stuff with the electronic music and playing off that in the 80s, and really plays towards those sensibilities. And another thing why I think his movies are cult movies is that most of his movies hold up, the good ones at least. There's some that, okay, that wouldn't happen today, and would this happen and all that stuff, but a lot of those movies are still entertaining movies to watch. And he's primarily an action director, but does a lot of horror and has horror elements in a lot of his movies. He's the creator of Halloween, the first Halloween. People really recognize that as one of the great horror movies of all time, including just this amazing sort of tropes that all these he's created, because that's the thing with Halloween, is that it created a lot of tropes that have been used. The point of view from the killer, the silent stalker sort of type. He created all these things. He's really a pioneer of the horror genre, and that's because of Halloween and movies like The Thing as well. And really, another one sort of style thing that I love about him is his establishing shots. Halloween does a great job of sort of just introducing the town that we're going to be in and the people and the high school students and sort of the relationships that are going on. The Thing also does a great job of Antarctica, has these great just silent establishing shots of Antarctica, where they are, what they're doing, and really allows the audience to connect with the setting before we even get introduced to the characters, so we know where they are and we can really feel them. That's what's something I love about The Thing, that you can feel the briskness of the air in the icy cold, Antarctica. You really feel that because of these great establishing shots. Something that Alfred Hitchcock, we talked about last week, did, a couple weeks ago now. Wow. Wait, no, it was last week, my bad. Really just does these great jobs at it, the establishing shots. He's another director like Hitchcock that does that. Another thing that is he does have sort of a negative look at movies. I say it's more of a cynical look, but something like They Live, it's very much like this guy has special sunglasses that can see all the evil going on in the world and the corruption that no one else can see, or Escape from New York, like war, set in the future, apocalyptic, like everything's gone to shit, sort of this negative look at it, even on Assault on Precinct 13, sort of a negative look at the jail system. All this sort of negativity, but that's because I don't think he's doing it at a negative viewpoint, but more of a cynical sort of satire-esque, especially something like They Live, but adding those horror action elements, something that not really a lot of directors could do. We talked about Edgar Wright a couple weeks ago, blending horror and comedy really well, really hard to do. Also action and horror, really hard to do, that we've seen later on in movies recently, something like The Purge. The Purge movies are really inspired by John Carpenter's movies. And really, John Carpenter really loved Westerns. He always loved the Westerns, that's what he grew up at, and he really wanted to make Westerns in the 80s and 90s, but they weren't really popular. So he created these Western tropes and just put them into modern day sort of scenarios. I like the one-man action movie, and just really creating the stuff where it's like the gunslinger or the singular sort of protagonist, all these little Western tropes that we see in his movies that aren't necessarily Western. It would be good to see him do a full-blown Western, but unfortunately he sort of just missed that time and has never really gone back. And another thing I want to point out is just does great stuff with small budgets. He never had a lot of big budget movies, and even his movies, a lot of them don't make a lot of money, so it's interesting to see him go back and forth a lot of the times. But I still think he's creating these he's great at having these small budgets, but making them seem like big budgets with great action and set pieces and great sets. And he uses a lot of stuff of like really smoke to create this interesting set, where it's like they use that in Alien, using smoke to sort of mimic the lack of a set they have to make it seem more mysterious. In a horror genre, you can really do that, and really using his sets creatively, and that's a big thing I really thought of, is not only the setting that he does a great job at, but sets. And they always talk about that, where movies a lot of times have to do with location. Having a great location of the movie can really say a lot. So he's using like the house in Halloween, and using every aspect and using certain things, and how he frames the camera to sort of show a little bit of dramatic irony, where you see Michael Myers and what's her name? Jamie Lee Curtis can't see Michael Myers, so using that interesting ways of using his settings. I was a really big fan of him, and that's one big thing I want to point out there, was his great use of settings. So let's move over into what I consider his best movie, The Thing. What I love about The Thing, it's one of those great horror movies that I consider really his best. Well, let me track back. I say this is the best and not something Halloween, and maybe that'll be a little controversial, because Halloween doesn't hold up as best because it has the sort of cliches of the horrors that you've seen a million times before, so it just seems sort of repetitive, and you've seen it before, even though you have to respect that, hey, he did it first. I've given a lot of respect to him. When I consider the best, this is something I highly recommend to a lot of my viewers. So when I went with that, I went with The Thing. Actually, it was released in June of 1982, a great month for sci-fi movies. E.T., Blade Runner, The Thing, Poltergeist, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, all coming in the month of June of 1982. A great month for sci-fi movie nerds. And The Thing is really up there for me, along with the Blade Runners and the E.T.s, because not only is it a great horror movie, it's a great movie. It's along the lights of, I'm not a horror movie fan, so it's interesting to see me do John Carpenter, but a lot of his movies sort of transcend just the horror genre and become just great movies to watch. Even though they scare me, they're still great movies. Something like The Shining, or even some of Hitchcock's movies that are scary and they're sort of horror-esque, like The Birds, but they transcend the horror, and they're not just cheesy horror movies. They're just great movies, and you have to watch them. Even though I'm not a fan of horror, I watch them because they're great movies. And really, at the end of the day, you have the horror aspects of it. In the Antarctica, being alone, no telephone communications, you can't get in the radio, there's this huge storm coming, that's sort of typical setting, like I talked about, great settings. But also having the ability to really just have a dramatic element to it. And this movie isn't just a horror movie, but really a movie about paranoia and who can you trust. And has those Blade Runner elements of what does it mean to be human and all this stuff, because the Thing is a monster that takes over humans and sort of mimics them and looks exactly like them and talks exactly like them, and you can't tell who's who. So it's a lot of scenarios of, are you the guy? I don't even know if I'm the Thing. Am I the Thing? Are you the Thing? I think you're the Thing. And then, they form these groups. Within these groups, they try to stay together. Sometimes there's leaders. Those leaders, the leaders within the group, there's other people that think the leader's doing a bad job, and then they try to rise up. It's almost like politics that's within this sort of small group, where it's like there's human relationships of someone wants to be a leader, someone wants to be a follower, there's someone that doesn't like the leader and tries to overthrow the leader and tries to form their own little group within the group. And character dynamics, and there's a great job about paranoia and the just slow distrust in human spirit and human trust. It's so easy to say, just get together and be happy and say like, everything's gonna be all right if we stay together as a team, we'll be fine. But then when people start dying off and you're starting to worry that, oh no, I'm next, I gotta worry about myself, and I can't trust anyone else, someone could be the Thing. It's this really interesting concept. I think John Carpenter does an amazing job of really delving into, and just that sense of paranoia. I love, because you don't see it too much in any other movies. That's the big thing I want to think about when The Thing is just that's such a paranoia that really washed over me the first time I watched it, because I was like, this is a great horror movie, and I'm scared with a Thing monster, but I'm really caring about these characters and their well-beings, and sort of the slow distrust of others and the paranoia, like I talked about. And it's just a great, effectively suspense movie. It has that horror aspects, but it really is a suspense movie with a monster in it, if you ask me. And speaking of the monster, The Thing is an incredible monster, because it could be anything, and I think the practical effects in this movie are fantastic, and they still hold up amazing today. You look at Alien, 1979, that holds up well, but not as well as 3 years later in 1982. I know they have better special effects, but Alien, you could watch, it's like, it looks good, but you can still sort of see the little robotics to them. But The Thing is just so crazy and so kooky and oddball and weird, and this comes from this guy's mind. It's like, oh my god, this is crazy, and the Thing monster is different every time. And you might have seen The Thing where the guy's sort of head pops out and it's got like the sort of flesh that's coming down and stretching like this, and it's very strange. And just to see how the story turns out, it keeps you on the edge of your seat, and I'm a big fan of the thriller genre, so I really think this is a great movie, and just a solid movie from top to bottom. They always talk about the difference between best and favorite. Favorite has a special connection to me, and this has a connection to me for sure, but just because of the quality. I'm so amazed by the quality and the craftsmanship and the incredible special effects and the amazing score and the incredible acting by Keith David and Kurt Russell. Their back and forth is incredible. And just the ensemble group, something that John Carpenter really hasn't done since. Like I say, he's just known for the Snake Plisskens and the Jack, what's his name from Big Little China? I forget. Well, whatever his name is there. Jack Burton, that's it. From Big Little China. Just great stuff like that. The singular protagonist, you really see an ensemble here, and does a great job for it. Now going over to my favorite and underrated, they're actually the same movie, that is Escape from New York. I say underrated because I really think this is a great movie overall, but like people think of it as a sort of a cool, sort of low budget action movie. This is a really great sci-fi movie. I think a lot of people dismiss the sci-fi aspect, but the themes that it brings up and the interesting things that it plays with, and just the world that it's created is so fantastic and so magnificent that no one necessarily is saying Escape from New York is one of the best sci-fi movies of all time, but it is so influential to a lot of people, and if it hits you, it really hits you hard. So that's why it's sort of my favorite aspect, because I saw this and I was really blown away. This was my second John Carpenter movie, and I was like, man, I really have to do this guy, because I saw this movie and I was like, wow, this is, just the imagination of this movie, the creativity blew me away. And what I love about this movie really is that the exposition, how it deals with exposition, and it's a masterclass in how it does it, I think, because good movies like Mad Max Fury Road or even The Matrix do a great job at telling you. That's a hard thing about screenwriters, is that you can't just say, have a character say a whole monologue of exposition. This is why this happens, and this is the backstory of the people, and all this stuff. It's boring, it's lazy, and audiences do not like it. Instead, what you have to do is try to weave the exposition. It's hard to do, but easy to say, hard to weave exposition into the dialogue to sort of reveal little things to the audience as they're coming along, or even just do what Escape from New York does and just throws you in the middle of it. They throw you in the middle of it, and you have to sort of figure out what's happening for yourself. It's like, okay, New York is sort of like this maximum state prison. We know that from the beginning, and it's like, but why are they there? What happened? We know it's the year 1997, but what happened before that? How long have we been in this state for? Who is in this? All these sort of crazy, kooky characters that we see in that. And then as we start from Snake Plissken in the sort of ivory tower wall, and as we see him go further and further and further into this crazy world in Manhattan, eventually he has to escape from New York, but as he gets further and further into it, the imaginative creativeness of John Carpenter's world is so amazing. Whether just the sort of the Mexican boxing ring and just the people that, it's like this dystopian apocalyptic movie before anyone else ever saw it, of this people, just like, what would happen? There'd be leaders, there'd be followers, like The Thing, and, there's certain people that have the food and certain people that don't, and some people that just go crazy. Like, you wonder, like, were these humans? Were they these weird creatures? It's very hard to tell, and like I said, using a small budget and using that smoke and certain locations of New York to really create this interesting thing of like unsettling this, and always having someone like creeping in the back behind you, but you don't know who it is, and just an incredible job, I think. The imagination that John Carpenter has, I'm blown away, especially when I watch this movie. And then really, I want to talk about Snake Plissken. He is a dope character. He's really an awesome character, and they always reference his name, Snake Plissken. Oh, you're Snake Plissken. Oh yeah, wait, Snake Plissken. I've heard of you. Weren't you the guy who blah 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 blah, right? And they always use that trope, and it's a great trope to really recognize the character's name, and really a great name, Snake Plissken, not John Smith or whatever, a boring name, and a great interesting thing with the eye patch that's not really explained, and the tank top, and he's just a really interesting character who's mysterious and sort of like you can't read him, and that really makes him super compelling in an odd way, because you don't really know who he is, but he's a badass, and you feel for him because he was sort of brought in the government and forced to do this, and now he's got a timer that will blow up and he has to do it. So you always have that typical thing of, oh, there's a timer, he's on the clock, and it makes it more suspenseful, but it's really a typical device, and it's used really amazingly, really, and they constantly sort of show like, oh, 15 minutes left, or he has 22 hours, I think, to do it, and so that also creates the character motivation of, okay, I'm good, I have time, but when time starts to run out, it's like, we gotta go, hurry up, that person's dead, we gotta leave them, we gotta get out of here, you know what I mean? Because he's trying to get the president of the United States, who's been captured by a plane crash, and bring him back, and they use this sort of rogue guy, Snake Plissken. So Snake is just a great character, and really creating that as a central character. That's why I love him and love exploring what he has to say, and really, it should be more than a cult classic action movie, and that's why I wanted to do this movie, because I'm very passionate about this movie, and I really want everyone to see it and experience it for themselves, because it is a great movie and can really just be amazed at all these little things that you see in the Star Wars or other movies, I think like Dark City, an underrated one as well, where they create these great worlds, and I just want to be in these worlds, and especially that world building aspect and like the setting that I talked about at the beginning, that John Carpenter does so well. It really makes you invested into the characters and into the world. You want to experience that and see what happens and see what's behind that corner, right? You always want to keep on going and seeing more and more and more. That's the main thing with John Carpenter, is an incredible job at that horror and that suspense, but you want to go back. You don't want to stay, oh, get me out of this, get me out of this. You sort of are curious, when you're covering your eyes, you're still opening them like this, because you want to see what's happening, because you're still interested and you're invested in these characters, and you're invested in the world that he's built. Well, anyways, guys, for those reasons, that's why John Carpenter is a master of controlled chaos. If you liked the video, make sure you like the video, comment below, let me know what your favorite John Carpenter movie is, who you want to see next on the Masters of Controlled Chaos. I'd love to do it eventually. You know, I have some lined up, but I love to hear fan submissions. I'd love to really check them out, especially directors that maybe I haven't heard of, or maybe have good careers, underrated ones, and I'd love to check them out and tell you my opinions on them. But anyways, guys, I'm Connor Old, and until next time, stay tuned.